I don't know how many of them are infected, so you need to listen closely. This is life or death. Mid-afternoon is when they come. Their boxy white trucks trawling the neighborhood streets, that familiar ice cream truck jingle piping out from roof-mounted loudspeakers and beckoning the neighborhood kids. If you hear this song, the one everyone knows, plug your ears until you get inside. Once inside, shutter your blinds, press yourself small in the darkest corner of your house, and wait until the storm passes. And whatever you do, don't let your children near the truck. I don't know how it started, or if it'll end. I don't think it will, but all that matters is that you follow the rules. It's an incomplete list. I don't know everything, and I don't want to, but I know enough to make a survival guide that might spare others the ruin that's torn my family to shreds. So if you want to stay alive, pay attention. Number 1. Plug your ears if you hear the jingle. Make sure your kids do too. If they can hear it, the truck will draw them like a magnet. If that happens, it's already too late. Number 2. If your child steps up to the truck, turn and run. They're as good as gone. There's no use trying to save them. It's a cowardly thing, but save yourself. Number 3. The previous rule holds more importance if you have other family. If you're gone too, they'll come looking, and the truck will be waiting. Number 4. If by some miracle you see the truck with time enough to escape, don't look at the driver. Don't try to look at the driver. If you see it, hurry inside and ignore the jingle. Number 5. Finally, if your child is taken but you manage to escape, be prepared. The thing that comes home later that night is not them. Ignore it. It'll go away. I learned this the hard way. I guess I sound crazy. I wish I was. Wish it were all some messed up fever dream that I could sweat out in a scalding shower and forget. I get it. My words carry no credence. Maybe if I tell you what happened, you'll actually listen. It was a Friday, and it was the end of a perfect summer. The whole world seemed captured in amber. My daughter and wife were doing a girls' day, and my son and I were doing a boys' one. The kids were both 8, twins if you're wondering, and still, in that phase where hanging out with mom and dad was fun. We were strolling back from the park when a familiar jingle pealed out through the neighborhood. The ice cream man had found his way to our little slice of suburbia. My son Kyle's blue eyes went wide, a little tug of blonde hair shifting over them as he looked up at me. He didn't even need to ask. "Sure, bud," I said with a grin. He bounced with excitement, pounded off down the sidewalk. White Mr. Frosty's ice cream truck turned the corner and trundled up our quiet suburban track. It crunched to a stop beside my son, maybe 20 feet from me. I watched as Kyle took his place beneath the little whale wing, his eyes scanning the menu. I couldn't see the driver. The window was tinted, but there must have been someone inside because the serving window scraped open. I shouldn't have been able to hear from where I was, but I could. The awful sound of abused metal screeching on rusty rollers. The inside of the truck was drenched in shadow, like the slant of afternoon sunlight didn't match that deep, inky darkness in battle. I should have sensed something was wrong. It felt off, felt cold all of a sudden, like that truck had sent a chilly wind biting up the street. Up until then, I'd been taking my time joining my boy, leisurely monitoring up the sidewalk without a care in the world. Then that chill nibbled through my bones. It triggered something visceral. An air raid siren went howling through my head, every fiber of my being screaming at me that something was off. And for my first time in my life, I reacted without thought. I don't know why I did it, but I fell into a sprint. A full tilt, blend bottle rush down the sidewalk. My chest squeezed tight. My swollen, thundering heart fought my lungs for space in a ribcage that was too tiny and full of drying cement. The houses, the upper middle class family homes with white trim and manicured lawns, shifted into a colorful blur as I bombed up the sidewalk. My legs scissored beneath me, my arms pumped, my cold breath whipped cracked through my shrinking lungs. I don't think Kyle heard me. I didn't yell, didn't scream for him to back away. My throat was full of gluey breath, nothing more, nothing less. There would be no sound coming from me, other than a shrill whistle of air sawing through my lungs. Kyle might have heard the slap thud of my sneakers hammering the sidewalk, but I don't think he heard that either. He sensed something was wrong, sensed that preternatural ability afforded only to children, the one that tells them when mom and dad are fighting, even when they can't hear it from across the house. He turned, his blonde hair whipping in the wind. He looked up at me with those piercing blue eyes. Blue, like two little oceans cooling off a face of sunshine. And then, the ice cream man took him. The mass of spider legs exploded out the darkness and sucked my son through the window like shrink wrap through a vacuum cleaner. He snapped back like a rag doll in a seething tingle of hairy jointed feelers. Now I did scream, wailed my son's name. He didn't have the time to scream. I heard a whoosh of air from his mouth as the spider legs tore him back by the stomach. He blipped through the window. His head smacked the top of the frame and cracked forward. It lolled like a dead thing on his neck as he disappeared into the truck. I ran harder. The world tilted and swayed underfoot, like I was barreling up the deck of a ship in stormy waters. My vision blurred, doubled, snapped together, and shot into focus as I lurched up to the ice cream truck. Then I froze. My lungs snapped like rubber bands, and a thin whistle of air escaped my nostrils. My whole body crawled. My heart was galloping through my ribcage like a mile-wide herd of bison. The inside of the truck was impossible. It was too big. It was a dystopian nightmare. Like the truck was a portal to the killing floor of a massive slaughterhouse. The rotten husk of cattle chutes and blood-stained aluminum textured. A sprawling plant, like the fossils of a forgotten industry. But it wasn't forgotten. It was dark, soaked in shadow, but I could see their pale, fragile shapes limping along for slaughter, faces slacked, eyes glazed like broken, violated dolls. The livestock was children, hundreds of them, caked in their own filth, shuffling along chutes while hulking fingers and blood-stained aprons and USGI, a cold weather mask, butchered them alive. There were no screams. That was the worst part, but it was deadly silent. Just the weak shuffle of feet, the wet tear of curved knives opening throats, the syrupy slap of blood hitting the floor. The dead were hoisted ankle up on a conveyor system, like at a dry cleaner's, which zipped them off through a darkened portal into the unknown. A hot trail of blood still spraying from their severed necks. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't blink. I felt my stomach churning with nausea, the hot rush of vomit threatening its way up. Then something grabbed out at me. I jumped back and screamed as a pale little hand reached for his dad. It was Kyle. His head pitched at the wrong angle on his broken neck. His eyes were dead, but there was still a little piece of him buried somewhere in there, because he said a single word in his voice I would never hear again. Run. Then he slammed close the serving window. As it cracked shut, I saw the mass of spider legs encircle him from behind like interlacing fingers. The hairy legs covered his mouth, his eyes, tore him backwards and sent him into the slaughter line. And the truck was driving off. The ice cream jingle cracking cheerfully from its roof-mounted speaker. It growled up the street, turned, and disappeared from view, carrying off my only son for good. I'll never forget the way my wife screamed when she came home, when I told her what happened among the mess of hellish police lights and detectives in cheap suits. Her face crumpled. She dropped to her knees and howled for her son. I hugged my daughter and cried into her blonde curls. The first 24 hours are the most important in abduction cases, but I knew that didn't matter. Knew what I'd seen. Knew my boy was gone for good, which, as it turned out, wasn't entirely the case. But I knew it was just the same on the afternoon that Kyle stopped for ice cream. I didn't tell the detectives what I had seen. How could I? They would have thought I was spinning tall tales to disabuse my guilty conscience of the fact that I had hurt my only boy. And they would have slammed me into the interrogation cell as a lead suspect. So I lied. Told them Mr. Frosty's ice cream truck had taken him. They put out a statewide APB. They found nothing. Me and my wife Jessica didn't sleep that night. Her face was puffy, eyes red with tears. Maya understood what was happening. Of course she did. Despite being 8, she was smart as heck and could catch on quick. She knew that Mom and Dad needed to be alone, so she put herself to bed without much fuss. I was numb. My whole body was cold. It was like a sick lie, giving my wife any hope. I knew deep down, deep in the furthest pits of my stomach, that our son was dead. All those children were dead. Blindly shuffled up the murder chute to those massive things, and with their drenched knives and their horrific USGI cold weather mask. My wife said nothing. I looked up at her. What? She blew shot into a tissue, crumpled it up. Kyle's out there. We should be looking for him, trying to find that truck. She cut me in an accusing glare. She blamed me. I knew she did, which wasn't her fault. The police said I stopped mid-sentence. My daughter's pale shape, growled in her PJ onesie, clutching her pink blanket, had appeared in the doorway. Honey, I rose and swept Maya up. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with fear. Of me? No. I knew at that instant what she was afraid of. He's home, Dad, she said. Kyle's home. The thing at the back door wasn't our son. It looked like Kyle. It walked like him. It wasn't him. It was pale, drenched in mud, its eyes cold and dead, not the warm ocean puddles they had been before, but two icy marbles that could freeze with a look. My wife sobbed, wrapped Kyle in an embrace. He didn't hug back, but those two cold eyes were pinned on me, a knowing smile breaking his face. "Why do you do it, Dad?" he said as we led him into the living room. I could feel Maya's body tense up against mine, knew something bad was about to happen. "What?" my wife asked our son. "Why do you try to kill me? Try to kill me? Huh, Dad? Why? I thought you loved me, Dad. I thought you..." His head reared back impossibly far on his neck, and his mouth curved into a dark O. He made a throaty, gurgling sound. His eyes rolled back into their sockets, showing only the whites. Jessica looked at me, eyes wide, then at Kyle. I don't think she realized she had started backing up. I don't think I did either. We backed into the living room, Kyle bearing down on us, forcing us back. Maya had started to sob into my shirt, her tears, warm and salty, were warming up my chest. The O of Kyle's mouth continued to expand, drawing further and further as he spoke again. Only this time, his lips didn't move, and the voice, deeper, warped, like the words of a demon from the mouth of a possessed, came hissing out of his throat. "Why, Dad? Why do you freaking do it? You like killing little kids, Dad. Want to kill Maya? Want to see her pigtails wrapped in brain? Stop." My voice was weak. The thing chuckled as Kyle's mouth continued pulling back. His lips were coated in bile. His teeth were brown and jagged. Jessica's head was on a swivel between our son and me. Her legs hit the couch, and gravity planted her on the cushion. She made a surprised "oh" sound. It was lost in the hoarse voice that had hijacked my son's mouth. I want to bash her little head in, hammer it until it crumples, and all those little girl thoughts and feelings come spilling out. The corner of my son's mouth tore. Rivulets of blood sealed down his throat. His mouth continued to pull back, like his head was splitting up into a hinge. "Make him stop, Dad," Maya moaned. I couldn't speak. My voice was lost. I fished for it, my Adam's apple bobbing, but it wouldn't come. Kyle's mouth split wider, bone and tendon snapping and crackling. His lower face soaked in blood. "Want to be a butcher, Dad?" The voice within my son chuckled. Hack through gristle and vein in the stretch of pink flesh, connecting tiny heads to tiny bodies. Feel the warm rush of blood over your hands. Feel your knife scrape bone as they drain. I saw his throat descend in undertow, like there was a knot of fingers trying to claw their way out. I want to watch the light bleed from their eyes as their life bleeds from their throat. Want to, Dad? Want to? Then Kyle's head tore back, his cheeks ripping, his mouth forcing open in an awful hellish grin, and the mess of hairy spider legs exploded from his throat. My wife started to scream, and one of the spider legs batted her across the face. Her head snapped around, crackled, and she pitched forward with as much life in her as bones. Her head snapped around, crackled, and she pitched forward with as much life in her bones as a sack of grain. That galvanized me into motion. I tossed my daughter into the couch and lurched for the rack of fireplace tools. The spider legs crackled and snapped, flickering around like a net of trindles from my son's broken mouth. Maya was shrieking. Her face crumbled in terror. The spider legs lunged for her, shot forward for a delicate little form. I took the poker free of the fire rack and whipped around, using my forward momentum to bring the instrument down with as much force as I could muster. Only I missed. Oh God, how I missed. Had lunged away from the spider thing trying to kill her. She had lunged right into the arc of my swing. The barbed end of the poker hit the center of her skull and went barring into her brain. I felt bone snap like glass. I felt the poker ease into the smoggy folds of her mind. She felt like she was a puppet, and I had cut her string. A little sob escaped as she planted face down, with a sickening thud. Her hand made a tiny fist, and then she died. The Kyle thing began to roar with laughter. It turned to me, the spider legs flickering and pulsing, snapping in all directions like tens of those dealership tube men. You like killing kids, Dad? You like? Kyle let out a surprised gasp. The spider legs snapped erect, like soldiers at attention. As the animation drained from my son's face, the end of the poker, which I had wrenched free of Maya's broken mind, was now juddering from my son's left eye. His ocean blue eyeball had deflated. A thin run of pus ran down one cheek. Then the trindles sucked back into his mouth with a throaty gurgle. My son's pitched forward, as dead as the rest of my family. I stood there, misted in my children's blood, and started to cry. I can hear the sirens getting closer. I wrote this as a warning, a plain cry for others to listen. I'm not looking for absolution. I'm broken, a man ruined by the ice cream truck that rode on a hot summer day. And I'm sure you'll see my name bolded in the paper conjoined to some variation of the term family annihilator. But it wasn't me. I bear blame. God, how I do. But it wasn't all me. Please don't make the same mistakes I did. And if your kids ask for ice cream, buy them a tub of the store-bought stuff. It's just as good. Oh wow, thank you guys for listening to this amazingly well written story. I really enjoyed it and it really gave me chills while reading it. Yeah, it was very good. Please continue to make more. Also thank you to the Redditor TheCrookedBoy for this amazingly well written story. As I said before, again, I hope you guys enjoyed this story for today. Also, quick note before I end off this video, I do realize that I've been gone for quite some time because of, the world going back from lockdown and everyone's going back to schoolwork, and I'm kind of busy. So I hope you guys understand, and I will continue to make videos like these because I love to. So if you guys made it to this part of the story or this part of this video, thank you so much. I'll see you guys in the next story. So don't forget to sit back, relax, and indulge in fear.